Hi there, it's Katie, and today's video is going to be about creating your own Nightscout site. So we are going to go ahead and build a Nightscout site. I'm going to turn off my automatic password logging so that it doesn't just keep popping up. And so we're going to head over to Nightscout instructions for a brand new site that are in loopdocs.org. Click on that, and you'll see all the steps are laid out here, steps 1 through 8. They're pretty quick, pretty easy, so we'll just dive right in. So we're going to start by creating an account at Heroku. Heroku is the hosting service for your site. It's free. It's really easy to use. So go ahead and click on that, and it will open up a new tab. I'm going to separate these tabs so that you can more clearly see the instructions on the left and the working tab on the right. I'm going to hold down this green button and I'm going to push this over to the right, and that way all of these are a little bit easier to see. There we go. Okay, so to get our Heroku account, we just fill in the information here. Pretty simple. First name, last name, email address. I'm going to use the one I never check because this is just for a general purpose video. We have the role. You can just choose hobbyist. It doesn't really matter what you put in here. If you want to put programmer, student, other, whatever you want. Country, enter that in. I am in the United States. For the primary development language, you're going to choose Node.js right there. Click on I am not a robot, unless you are, in which case, sorry. And then we're going to create free account. Wait a couple seconds and they'll pop up that says, hey, we sent you something in your email. Go check on it. I say, okay, I will go check on it. So my email is over here. I will check on my email and it says, here, thank you for signing up. Please click this link to activate it. Okay, done and done. They'll ask you to set up a password, no problem. Do notice that they have kind of strict requirements. It has to contain letters, numbers, and symbols, and it has to be a minimum of 8 characters. So I am going to enter a compliant password here. Remember to write this down so that you don't forget it, because you will need to log into your Heroku account periodically over time as you're looping and using Nightscout. So definitely save this password somewhere. You can always have them send you a reset message later if you'd like, but go ahead, write it down. All right, we're all set up. We can click here to proceed. Wonderful. And that drops us off at this line. So right now in the instructions, excuse me, we are right here. We finished creating the password and we're on this screen. And as it says, we have one last step to complete, and that is we have to add a credit card information to this site. Don't worry, it's still free. They don't charge you. I've had this account for 6 years on Heroku, my Nightscout site. It's just that they want one on file. So you can go up to account settings, click on the little ninja in the upper right corner, click on account settings, and then billing, and you'll get taken to the screen to add your credit card. Go ahead and click it, and then you're going to enter in your payment info. I'm going to pause right here because I'm not going to put my credit card up on the internets. I'll pause right here, and we'll hop back on when that's all entered. We're back. My credit card has been entered and I'm good to go with this. We are all done with step 1. And now we move on to step 2. So step 2 is to create an account at GitHub. So we can click on this link. That opens up another tab. I'm going to move my tab over here so that I have it over here. And so now you start with just creating a GitHub account. Pretty simple. You get to choose your username. I'm going to choose Tess D. Simone. It is not taken. I get to use that. Cool. I will enter my email address again. I will create a password, and again, check what they require so that you meet all their little nuances about passwords. And then you're going to have to solve a puzzle. This is pretty simple. You have to take this weird looking creature and make them upright by pressing these little arrows. They all look done. There we go. Llama. I have no idea what these things are. Maybe a fox, pig. Yay. Okay, so now that we get verified, we can create an account. Click Create Account. And as it says in the instructions, they're going to start asking you some pretty simple stuff. Do you want the free account? Yep. I'm going to unsubscribe to the newsletters. I don't like a lot of spam, so I'm going to take that up. I'm going to say continue. Then they ask you for some background information about yourself. You can go ahead and answer these if you want. I usually choose skip this step. And it says, okay, you're on to verifying your email address. So we need to go back and do the same thing like we did for Heroku. We're going to go to our inbox. We're going to get to GitHub, and it says verify. Yep, thank you. Okay, I'm verified, so that's good. We are exactly where we need to be. Everything is set up for step 2. So now we can move on to step 3. And step 3 is about forking and deploying CGM Remote Monitor. So this is where the vocabulary might get a little intimidating. Don't worry, it's really easy. We're going to click on this link over in the directions for step 3 that says go to Nightscout CGM Remote Monitor Repository. You can get there a number of different ways. You can click on this link. If you're not so inclined, you can be in your GitHub page and type Nightscout and search. And they didn't find anything. Nope, all GitHub. So search all GitHub. You'll find Nightscout CGM Remote Monitor. You can click on that. Or if you click on this link, it will open up the same exact page. So either way, all good. So once you have that up, as it says and points to in the red arrow, you're going to click on the fork link. So forking is the word for copying in GitHub. Basically, we are copying an exact copy of Nightscout developers' code for their website and putting it into our GitHub account, my Tess D. Simone account. So now I have an exact copy forked or copied from Nightscout. Perfect, great. Once the forking is done, we're going to scroll down, as it says. We're going to scroll down past all these files and folders until we get to the purple button that says Deploy to Heroku. And we're going to click that button. And since we're still logged into Heroku, it just populates over in Heroku and says, okay, we're ready. Create a new app. So now we're on step 4 of the directions. And basically we start with picking our app name. The app name isn't like Nightscout or anything like that. The app name is simply the beginning of your Nightscout URL. So whatever you want to call it. The example in the direction says, if you want it to be Jane has the sugars, you can do Jane has the sugars. If the website is already taken, it would give you a little red X here and tell you to pick a different name. But Jane has the sugars is currently available. So I'm going to do that just because it's in the docs and directions. You can always come back and change the app name later if you want, but basically it's just a starting point. And then we're going to scroll down a little bit to this section called config vars. Vars stands for variables. And most all of these are literally just default settings that we don't need to touch. So we're going to go to the directions, and in the directions on Loop Docs, there are a few variables pointed out in this section that you do need to stop and look at. So the first one listed here is API secrets. So scroll down, they're in alphabetical order, and read up what API secret is. Basically, API secret is kind of like the password for your Nightscout site. So you want to pick a good one. Avoid using special characters like exclamation points or @ symbols because those can cause some problems. So I'm going to keep mine pretty simple. I'm going to do my fake password 123 and leave it at that. So that's saved. The next one is display units. So display units, the default is milligrams per deciliter. If you are millimole users, please change it to mmol. If you're a milligram per deciliter user, just leave it as it is. The next thing we need to do is the enable line. The enable line already comes pre-filled with 2 values, care portal and basal, but we actually need a whole bunch more. So I'm just going to copy this entire line over here, and I'm going to paste it right over these. There we go. And basically these enable words, you want them all with just a little space between them. Don't put any commas, don't put any quotes. Make sure that your autocorrect doesn't separate out the word care portal into 2 words. And what these words represent are kind of like turning on features in your Nightscout site. So bridge is the feature that pulls your CGM data in from Dexcom. Loop says we're going to eventually want to hook our Nightscout site up to Loop. We're going to display some pump data, insulin on board, carbs on board, basal rates. Care portal is where you enter treatments, sensor age, cannula age, pump battery age. Open APS, I'm actually having in here because that relates to setting temp targets remotely, which is a possibility in some versions of Loop. And override, because if you're using overrides in Loop, this will turn on the pill there. So you just copy and paste that whole line. Next, this is not totally necessary, but I love it. Oh, colors is defaulted now to theme is colored colors. So I can actually change this direction here. We're going to leave that there. Perfect. Great. Glad they updated that. The last bit of information you need is probably the place that most people go wrong, and that is your bridge username and password. These are your Dexcom account information that you entered when you very first signed into your app on the Loopers Dexcom app. So it is not necessarily something that you remember. You can't look it up in the app. Once you've entered it, Dexcom doesn't display it to you ever again. The only way you can really double down and be sure is to either go to Dexcom Clarity and try logging in to make sure that you know what it is, or you can delete your Dexcom app and reinstall it, relog in, and make sure it's the same. So if you have any doubts about what your Dexcom login is that you use, like you change account names or you change passwords anytime in the future, if you change your password, you do want to come in here and make sure these are up to date. Now, I'm going to use a fake account because I also don't want to have my information floating in the internets. 1, 2, 3. Those are obviously fake. And we'll put all that in. And if you're outside the United States, you do need to make sure that you change the bridge server from US to EU. So just be aware that that needs to be done as well. So that's clearly pointed out in the docs as a common source of error to be careful of. Okay, so now that we entered all those in, as the docs say, we have them all fixed up. We're going to go all the way down to the purple Deploy App button. And once I press it, we're going to have a box pop up here that says Build App, and it's going to start building the app. It will probably take about 5 minutes. It'll kind of stall out. It'll look like it's paused, but it takes about 5 minutes to do, so we will wait it out. When it's done, we're going to see 2 little buttons on the bottom that say Manage App and View, and we'll have little green check marks all the way down. So we'll just wait it out. All right, so we're back and the app successfully deployed. We can see that down here, and hopefully we are going to keep following with the directions. So as the directions said, at the end of step 4, when we see the Manage App and View buttons at the bottom and all the green check marks, we're going to click on the Manage App button and move on to the next step. So let's click Manage App, move on to the next step. As it said, we're going to select the Settings tab near the top of the screen, and then we're going to click on the Reveal Config Vaers. So click on that. It's great. We have a whole long list of all this stuff that we're going to look at. Fantastic. FYI, side note, if you want to change your site's name ever, this is where you change it. It's also under settings. So back to it. It says scroll down to the bottom of that list and we're going to have an empty row. We're going to add some values that are specific to looping users. These are not required if you're not looping, but if you are looping, you'll definitely want to add these in. So I'm just going to copy and paste. The one that's absolutely required if you're looping is device status advanced, and we're going to set the value to true. We just type that in, say add. Fantastic, that's there. The next one would be pump fields. We'll put that in. We'll say battery reservoir clock status, put that in. And we're going to put in the same thing for pump retro fields. Show forecast. This is showing the little purple dots that'll show where Loop thinks your blood sugar is going to go. Oops. Loop. Show plugins. Just add that. These next three are all about loop, not looping alarms. So if you want to keep your Nightscout site open, for example, if you're a parent, or actually for adults, this is a really good one. Sometimes the little loop banners that pop up at 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 60, and 2 hours for loop not looping, they're just a banner and they don't have any audio with them. And so people sleep through those alarms if their loop failed due to Riley Link going out or some whatever it is. You can set it up so that you could keep your Nightscout site open overnight and just keep it by your bedside. And this will trigger audible alarms if you want at the following minute values. So if this person, as I have this site set up, poor Jane with the sugars, if her loop fails and she keeps her Nightscout site open and wants to hear alarms for it, at 20 minutes of loop not looping, it will send her an alarm that she can choose to snooze and ignore or do something about it. Whatever value you put here, you can put 40 minutes for the urgent alert or 60 minutes, whatever you want. It's totally up to you. I'll just leave it at 40, no biggie. So finally, the last thing in here is this paper trail token. I recommend deleting this. Heroku gives you this paper trail thing for free, and it's basically just a little logging service, but they give you a tiny bit of space, not a lot of database space, and it fills up sometimes, and it just really doesn't give you any added benefit. And the problem is that you'll get a spam email that says, oh, your paper trail is full. Do you want to buy some space? It's just spam and it's not really worth it. So I would delete that one. You can delete it. It's gone. That's perfect. Now you won't get any spam email. So we're done with step 5. It's really great. There is no save button that you need to push on here. It just saves itself. But we are going to go to set up profile now, step 6. So we're going to scroll all the way back up to the top. We're going to find the open app button in the upper right. We're going to click on that. And the first thing we see is, oh, you have the wrong profile setting. We need to fix that. Okay, cool. Say okay. It might pop up a few times, but eventually it takes you to the profile editor. And within the profile editor, I'm going to scroll down on the directions so you can see it a little bit clearer. You do have to do a few of these. Time zone is one of them. So for example, you really need to set your time zone. I'm in Pacific. That's great. Insulin to carb ratio, I'm going to say 8. If you have more than one, you can always press this green button and add another one if you have a different one at a certain time. Say, for example, at 5 p.m., you change to 1 to 10. You can just keep adding them. Same thing for insulin sensitivity. Started at midnight, let's say it's 60, and at 8 a.m., we go to 50. So you can put something like that in there. Don't worry about the carb activity. basal rates you can enter in. For example, let's say we go here and at 7 a.m. she goes up to 1.6, and at 10 p.m. maybe she comes back down to 1.3, just making things up. So you enter in what your values are for those parts. You don't have to put target range in. It's not really useful for Nightscout loopers. You will want to save this. If you press save and you don't have your API secret entered in, it will say your device is not authenticated yet. You say OK. So then you have to click the authenticate link and you have to get your API secret. Remember, we created that earlier, so we're just going to put that in. Mine was my fake password 123, I think. Yes, admin authorized. If you've forgotten your API secret, you can go to your config vars and find it. It's right here. And you can copy and paste it off. So you can always go back and find it. Now that I have authentication status is authorized, I can save it. And it gives me a warning that the profile is going to be saved in a newer format. Am I okay with that? Totally fine. Okay, cool. It's saved. Yep, cool. Status, success. And now I can close out the profile editor. It didn't save, did it? All right, that's real world. No, it did save. Look at that. It's saved. Oh, I gotta authenticate. Oh, I had to click the store hash. So there you go. My fake password 123, and I forgot the store hash. Update. Save. Let's see if that went. There we go. So now we're okay. No warnings pop up. That means it saved my profile correctly. We're all good to go. We are done with step 6 in the directions, and we can move on to step 7. So the last real part about setting up Nightscout is step 7, which is over here. The render basals and everything like that are all under Nightscout settings. Those are the 3 horizontal lines in the upper right-hand corner. That's your settings. And just so we're clear, the other part is this plus sign. Once you authenticate your site, the little lock will turn into a plus sign. That's your care portal. The care portal is where you can enter various different information about your diabetes management. So things like site changes, pump changes, temp basals, whatever you want to do are all in here. And the reason we put Open APS on the enable line is because these last ones for temporary targets, if you're going to be using a version of Loop that has a remote temp target, those will only show up if you have Open APS on your enable line. And if you decide later to set up IFTT, they will integrate with these things. So that's a side note. We're going to get back to step 7 now. Step 7, click on that 3 horizontal lines, and you're going to come down and take care of a few things. One, make sure your units are all set correctly, your language. And I like default, so I'm going to put mine at default. I'm going to go down and make sure all of my plugins are turned on like I want them to. I'm going to turn on overrides. Pump battery change, I don't really track battery changes anymore, but I could. Basically, if you're a Medtronic user and you want to track how many days old your pump battery is, you can log those changes in here. Not so useful for Omnipod people, but for Medtronic people, our batteries last about 15 days, so it's kind of nice to know on day 14 that we got to be keeping a battery. So you can save it, and all of that is there. Now, if you notice, I don't have any CGM data coming in, and that is the part of the last part, the troubleshooting. If you don't see CGM data about 10 minutes after you finish setting up your site, that means you probably have a problem with your Dexcom information that you put in bridge password and bridge username. So check that these are valid by going to your Clarity account and making sure that your Clarity account lets you in with those and shows current data. If it's missing data, that means your logins are different than that. The other thing that is possible is that you don't have the share slider turned on for your app, your Dexcom app. So you have to have sharing turned on so that Bridge can get that information. So make sure you turn sharing on in your app and add a follower. So with that said, you should be seeing CGM data by now, more than likely. The reason I'm not seeing CGM data on here is because I entered fake Bridge data. This is not an account, this isn't real, and so no data is coming through. But that gets you to the point where you're all set up. Finally, the last step, step 8, is don't forget to go back to your Loop app, click on your settings icon in the bottom right, and scroll down to the Nightscout services, open that up and add your URL and your API secret, integrate them in. So your URL that you're going to enter in starts with HTTPS, like that. And you're going to just copy and paste all of this. So you want the S as part of it, and you want no trailing slash. And by trailing slash, I mean don't have a little slash like that. That will mess up the URL entry in Loop. So keep that off, keep the HTTPS, and you'll be good to go. And that's it. Oh, one last thing. Future warning. At some point in this, the free little database that Nightscout gives, that Heroku gives you, will fill up with data. They only give you a smallish amount of data, and it will fill up over time with enough looping data being stored in that database. And when that happens, you'll see some odd behavior in your Nightscout site. Like usually for most people, it's that the share data just stops coming in. And so there's a whole set of directions for how to fix that and how to deal with it. It's really quite simple, but I just want you to be aware, keep it on your heads up that if your Nightscout site starts going stale in about 3 months time or so, don't forget that it's probably this cleanup, and there's a page here, it's linked for how to go ahead and clean this all up. And it basically says you're going to come into your Heroku account, you're going to click on this little link there, and you'll run some stuff within here. It's very easy, very simple. You won't have a problem with it. So with that, enjoy your new Nightscout site and have fun. Bye.